So you want to become a cloud computing professional. Well, let's talk about it. Now, when it comes to becoming a cloud professional, it's actually an area that, in my opinion, has gotten somewhat more challenging. And there's a lot of dynamics to it, but in a nutshell, we have the convergence of several factors. First of all, technology is becoming ever more wider, but also more specialized. And what I mean is that we have all of these technologies that we keep hearing about, for example, in the media. We have AI, we have blockchain, we have serverless, on and on and on. And as a cloud professional, you may need to know a lot of that. Now, one of the things about being a cloud professional is it's generally better to specialize. So the question is do you become an AWS security architect, or do you become a Google Cloud engineer, or do you become an expert in Salesforce? Whatever that is, there's an area that you should really specialize in. And one of the things I recommend to anyone looking to get into the cloud or is even new to the cloud in some respects, let's say under 2 years, is to work with a coach. Now, that coach who has experience in cloud computing, generally a coach, should have at least 10 years in the technology sector to be any good, to be able to provide you advice, to have real-world experience. And that real-world experience should be able to be something that you can exploit to your advantage. And what I mean by that is you should be able to ask questions and get good answers that have some history to it and also good examples so that you can think in your mind, okay, if I want to become a cloud professional and I used to be an Uber driver, what do I have in common to that career path that I can possibly take into the cloud? Well, again, there may be a lot there may be not. It all depends on your experience. And a coach should be able to look at your experience and look at what you're good in and understand what you're really looking for and translate that into hopefully a career path. Now, when you consider cloud computing, it's definitely an in-demand skill. However, I'm not here to pump up cloud as this ever super duper solution to everyone who wants to get into technology. I'm going to be very direct and honest. Unlike a lot of other YouTubers and career coaches, the reality is that the cloud is hyper competitive right now and more people fail at it than probably succeed at it. That's probably the real truth. And after teaching so many of these boot camps and coaching so many people, it seems like it's getting a lot harder. And the harder that you work doesn't mean that you're going to get better results. So what you should realize is that you may need to invest some of your time and resources into finding a coach that can at least help you in a more direct manner. And what I mean by direct manner is maybe they have contacts that you don't. Or maybe they have experience that can save you a lot of time. Maybe they can provide advice to you that makes you think twice. This is what a coach should do. So when we consider a coach, they should help you with career goals. They should also identify your skill areas and where you could go or where would be a great fit for you. They should provide guidance. Now, guidance should not be cheerleading. Now, cheerleading is, yeah, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Okay, sure, that's important to have in a coach. But a coach should be direct and honest. They shouldn't be saying, you can be an amazing data scientist if you can't do basic math, right? These are things that a coach should be man enough or woman enough to do. This is something that I always tell my students is I'm not going to basically bull crap you. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell it like it is, and that's okay. If you don't want to hire me anymore, that's perfectly fine. You don't like my courses, that's perfectly fine. I'm not here to pretend things are perfect, because they're not. I am here to give you honest advice. That's my goal. Okay, so one of the areas that I find coaching is exceptionally good at helping people with is really getting you prepared for that interview. So if you're able to prepare for that interview and be able to understand the thought process, but also, most importantly, understand the types of questions that you'll likely get in an interview, this will be very helpful. The reason is because interviewing is stressful already, and you want to make it less stressful. So as a coach, for example, my goal is to get you to think about what type of questions you should be getting or would likely get. Now again, we can't predict the employer, what they're going to ask and how they're going to ask it. But we can typically predict a general area of what they may ask based on the job description and our experience with that employer as well. So it is important too that when you consider a coach, look at their experience, look at what they can help you with, right? That's really what it's all about. Also too, when you generally get into a coaching program, and when I say a program, usually that's going to be extended. That's going to be more than just a couple weeks. Usually it can be for a few months. And that program should really help engage you not only with the coach, but hopefully with other people. So typically a group call is great. Being able to interact on a Slack program even is great as well. Whatever that is, it's really important to interact with other people. So what would be some of the reasons you should hire a coach? Well, first, it should really help you save some time and money to be able to actually get to that cloud interview faster and be more successful at it. And hopefully that'll in turn allow you to start working faster and make money, right? That's really the goal. Another thing is you want that chance of success of passing the rounds of interviews that you'll have to be as great as possible. In other words, you don't want to have to keep interviewing if you don't have to, and especially if you're looking for a job as a newbie or a fresher, right? You need to really just get working. You really don't have time to play around interviewing with 12 or 14 companies. You need to get a job and get that experience. Another thing, too, is can the coach provide you with the competitive advantage? If they have experience in certain areas, or they worked at different companies, or they have training in certain areas, or they've been in the business a long time, they're probably going to be really helpful to you to provide you that advantage, possibly in the sense of being able to ace that interview, right? To find the right companies to interview at as well. One of the things, too, that I personally walk my clients through, my students as well, is I make sure that they understand that when they look at jobs, let's say on LinkedIn, to identify the really good jobs and to really identify the not so good jobs. And don't apply to the crappy jobs, because the reality is that if it's a crappy job, you're going to have crappy results. And what I mean is not only that, they may just waste your time, but they're probably not going to pay you anything. And on top of that, you probably deserve better. Because the reality is that there is really right now, at least in my opinion, and looking at the research as well, seems like there's definitely a lot more people in cloud than there used to be, and the jobs are tightening up, so it's really competitive. And I think also the coach should not only guide you on how to identify the good roles from the not so good roles, but to identify how you need to submit to that role. So, for example, don't just submit a resume that is just bland, that is not customized to that role. We have to realize that you and possibly 300 or 400 other people have submitted to the same role. Now, LinkedIn does a really good job at showing you how many people have applied in a certain amount of time. Like if you see a role that has 100 applications in a week, well, that's a pretty competitive role because that role probably is not only just on LinkedIn, it's probably on a number of other sites. So we could be looking at 300 or 400 different possible applicants for that one cloud role that pays $80,000, $100,000 a year. So we need to realize that you need to get that competitive edge any way you can. And to do that is not just to submit the same resume over and over and over, right? Customize that resume. Another thing that should happen is you should do your research as well and look at the company. Look at the reviews on Glassdoor. So Glassdoor is another great resource I always recommend to clients and students to look at because you'll see whether or not that company treats people well, but also, too, you get some insight into interview questions you may get. A lot of these companies, especially like the larger FANG companies and even the top 100 tech companies even, they have this, and this is just human nature too, right? Where they're going to ask you pretty much the same thing over and over. So you might be applicant number 50 and you might be interviewee number 10. And they probably ask the same questions to the other 10 people. And sometimes people contribute on Glassdoor and say, here's a question I got. Well, if you see that company A asks you this question every time they interview you, that's a question you probably should know on how to answer. Okay, now another thing I'd recommend too is consider the cost, right? So think about just the basic fact that if it's going to take you 6 months to get a job, and if a coach can help cut down that job search possibly to 3 months or 4 months, maybe even shorter, who knows, then you could be making, $10,000 a month, for example, if you're making six figures, right? So if you pay a coach $100, $200 an hour, and you spend 10 hours with them, you've made money. It just, again, that's a lot of people just can't seem to think like that. So just think about just the fact that it is an investment in you. And if you invest in yourself and you get a return quicker, then that's great. The money was well spent. For anyone interested in coaching or getting into a hybrid program like Cloud Interview Ace to prepare for that cloud interview, check out techcommanders.com. Have a great day.
Welcome to the Cloud Interview Ace program from Tech Commanders, the best way to succeed at cloud computing interviews, period. Cloud Interview Ace is a hybrid online training and coaching program with a professional community mentored by industry veteran Joseph Holbrook, the Cloud Tech Guy, a pre-post-sales guru in cloud computing. Save yourself not only thousands of dollars, but also possibly years of preparation in this progressively more challenging saturated job market by signing up for Cloud Interview Ace. Don't risk your career on an interview without proper preparation. Taught by industry experts in both cloud engineering and cloud development with coaching by the Cloud Tech Guy who will spend hours coaching and mentoring you one-on-one. Learn to pass the technical and soft skills interviews questions from the basics to advanced topics covering cloud pre-sales architecture, post-sales focused objectives such as cloud deployment, cloud design, cloud engineering, migrations, connectivity, and more. Cloud Interview Ace will also provide you value with resume tips, preparation strategy, how to avoid common mistakes, mock interviews, technical deep dives, must-know tips, offer negotiation, and also, very importantly, whiteboarding designs. AWS, GCP, and Azure cloud platforms will be covered. This can change your world, so what are you waiting for? Let's get started.